What's up, guys? Welcome back.
We're looking at Syria today. It's all over the news, and I'm not here to go and tell you what you already know, that the Assad regime has fallen and the rebels have taken... I'm here to tell you what these groups stand for and what's going on. So, the Assad regime, largely out of the picture. They were backed by Russia, Hezbollah, Iran, and they were dunzo, finito. For better and worse, the Assad regime I was never a fan of just because it's authoritarian. The other group is the YPG SDF. So when you hear about the Kurds of Syria, they're talking about the SDF and YPG, even though it's multi-ethnic. There's many Arab and many different communities in the SDF, different militias that are under that umbrella of the SDF. And then we have the rebels, and the rebels are it's a mixed bag, all right? So a lot of them had to revoke their Al-Qaeda allegiance. Many of them would just take off their ISIS patch when ISIS was defeated in 2019, and then put on a FSA patch or an HTS patch or SNA patch. You know, there's many different militias in the rebels. Not all of them are good, but some of them are true to what they believed in. Since 2012, they are freedom fighters. They're looking for a change in government, and they have a good reason for it. So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. And when I spoke about ISIS, yeah, so in 2019, when, a lot of politicians like to say, 2019, we destroyed the caliphate of ISIS. They still exist. They still hold ground in Syria. They always have. Maybe just little villages, maybe they're underground for a bit, but a lot of those fighters actually went to Idlib, which is where the rebels were held up for the last 5 years in a stagnant war against the regime. A lot of them went over there, changed out their patch, put on a different patch so they could fight the regime and commit jihad. So those are the factions. We're going to delve deeper into that, but you remember the Fertile Crescent, back in middle school? This is where civilization was created. There's many different ethnicities, dialects, thousands, religions. This is where the cradle of civilization is.
Video idea. And this video idea that I'm going to be talking about.
Why did I join the SDF YPG rather than some of these other groups that I could have joined? Thousands of different militias. Well, let's talk about the rebels, all right? The rebels are the ones where they have tons of different ideas and tons of different factions. And my main argument against the rebels are a couple points. The first one is that they are pretty much all backed by the Turkish government, which we all know isn't the force of good in the Middle East. They're in a very strategic location for NATO because they're in between the Middle East and Europe, but it can be argued that they prolonged the Syrian civil war so that they could get refugees into Turkey and then threaten their neighboring countries in Europe with these refugees. And they would consistently line them up on the borders of these countries to say, hey, give us money. They would do it for influence. They would do it to further their goals and further their political ambitions or whatever it is. For monetary gain, they would do this and they would use the Syrian people as a weapon. It would be very nasty stuff. So the Turkish government funds SNA, they fund the FSA, they fund all these groups, HTS, they work alongside them. Even years ago, they're doing incursions in the Idlib area, and they were side by side with people with ISIS patches, like not even trying to hide it. So they fund them, they give them training, they make a mercenary force out of them. It's poverty-stricken Syrian people that have a jihadist leaning. And if you still don't believe me that the Turkish government is funding ISIS, actively funding and training ISIS fighters, why was Baghdadi found 5 kilometers away from the Turkish border? In Idlib, the area that the Turkish military is actively in for the last 5 years. Why? Why did he have to be killed by the coalition?
He died like a dog.
Why was it not the Turkish government? They have MIT. It's a prestige intelligence agency of Turkey, and they didn't know that he was 5 kilometers away from their border for years. How about the second guy, al-Qurashi, the guy who took al-Baghdadi's place? Also killed by the coalition. Where was he found? 500 meters away from the Turkish border. Right next to these MIT agents, and right next to the Turkish military, hiding in plain sight. 500 meters from the border. You'd think that any other country would not know that. Think about it. It's not possible. They knew that having that leader there, the fighters would come in there and it'd be more meat for their assaults onto the SDF enclaves as well as the regime territories. It was just more mercenaries that they could have to further their goals to control Syria. So that's my biased take, but I think it has some standing. And my second point against the rebels is the SNA FSA. The SNA is the Syrian National Army, and they were a break-off sort of splinter faction that came off of the FSA, the Free Syrian Army. Now, again, I want to reiterate, there's a lot of good people in the FSA. There's a lot of people who are freedom fighters just trying to fight Assad because they were wronged by him in the past or whatever it is. But there's also some people that are very, very jihadist. And there's videos out there I can't share, but you guys have certainly seen where they're forcing Christians to yell Allahu Akbar. They're taking the YPG fighters, the YPJ, to come with them. They're beating them. They're kidnapping them. They're making them chant things. They're just brutal. They're brutes. They are largely mercenaries. They get paid and trained by the Turkish government. There's no way around it. They continually invade areas that I was in when I was in Syria. Gadaspi, Sarakania, now Manbij. Manbij is being taken. Apparently it's already taken. You know, it was going to be a rough area to defend in the first place. It's on the western part of the Euphrates, but their goal is intertwined with what Turkey wants, to pretend that now that the Syrian regime is gone, that these rebels are going to make everything right and there aren't going to be human rights violations. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing it. It's not going to be the case. And I mean, to live in a war-torn country, it's not a life. You're constantly looking behind your back wondering, am I going to get killed? You're constantly looking at the skies now, trying to find are there drones, are there jets, is something happening around me? It's a constant fear of death, and it's something that I've experienced in Ukraine, but especially Syria and Iraq. It is nonstop and is not a way to raise your family, and the Syrian people deserve a break. And you know, it looks like the rebels are going to be holding on to that ground, and I pray that that land that they take isn't just going to be for the Turkish government. It's not just going to be for resources and making this Salafist, jihadist government that's cracking down on all these ethnic people in Syria. They deserve a lot better than that. At this point in Syria, it's like the worst dystopian sci-fi movie you can ever think of. I don't even know which one I'm thinking of, but I have one in mind, and that's what it is. As for Eastern Syria, controlled by the SDF and YPG forces that I was a part of, they have a different solution. They have democratic confederalism, part of their ideology for all of the ethnicities that are there. And I'm going to speak about my personal experiences under democratic confederalism, living in Syria as a fighter. It's beautiful. It is true democracy. And it's the only way that Syria can go forward, in my opinion. So people like to knock on the YPG for taking out their patch and putting on SDF.
And with about a day's notice, they declared that they were the Syrian Democratic Forces. I thought it was a stroke of brilliance to put democracy in there somewhere.
Look, the YPG still exists. We still wore YPG patches, even though the SDF was our umbrella organization. It's an umbrella organization. They're bringing in all these different militias, and YPG and YPJ, they're not the only ones. There's Manbij Security Council. There's all sorts of groups, Christians, Jews, Muslims, everybody has militias in there that fight under the SDF for a common goal of democracy. Ground is being lost, the situation is still developing, but they're largely holding on to the ground that they wanted to keep their community safe and democratic and free. So for myself, when I look at Eastern Syria and I see I've been to every village. I've been to Raqqa. I've been to Tabqa. I've been everywhere. It's incredible to see the different identities living in peace. It's like America. You know, I haven't been back to the States in the last 2 years. Now I am. I've been here for about 10 days now, and it's a big wake-up call for me after traveling internationally to see how diverse we are. All of Syria has been through war. They've been through peace. They've been through hardship, poverty. Somehow, they found a way in Eastern Syria to stay together. I think it's cool. It's admirable. It really is. It kind of makes you think at our political situation here in the States and be like, oh, why can't we be like them, you know? And that is why they stand for democratic confederalism. And it's the idea that every village has a different identity, different language sometimes, different religion. They all can do what they want in their village. You're free. Do what you want in your village. You guys have a strong community, you have a strong family bond there. Awesome. Do your thing, but you must contribute to the general society. And that's how it works. You have your own laws, awesome. Do your own thing. And that's how it was in Shengal. I was there for 13 months. It was the Yazidis. You think about the Christians of Iraq. You know, these people they're in a very tough situation. They're able to hold on to themselves because they made their own militia called the YBS to protect their village. And that's what that's all about. That's what democratic confederalism is. It's not fake. These people are incredibly devoted to this. I think like half the fighters in the YPG are cadres. You know what cadres are? No sex, no drinking, no phones, no nothing until Kurdistan is free. True freedom fighters. Not just like, oh, there's money here, this or that. So that is why Eastern Syria has largely been the most stable region of Syria for the last 5 years. Idlib and Assad, they were always fighting. We had a couple invasions in 2019 in Eastern Syria by the Turkish government and the SNA forces. But other than that, it's been largely peaceful. We have Yat and Hat, American-trained special forces, Kurdish special forces, and Arab. Many Arab fighters and militias also. I think like half of the SDF is made up of Arabs who are fighting for democratic confederalism and their communities. We have special forces trained by the coalition to fight against ISIS sleeper cells and to keep it peaceful, as well as control the borders and protect it from the SNA and the Turks. And yes, it's true, the coalition are the ones that are backing the SDF. I don't love everything the coalition is doing around the world, but no matter if they're in Syria for resources, no matter if they're there for democracy or whatever it is, I truly believe they're backing the right side. I wouldn't have returned to YBS for a second time had it not been that case. So let's talk about my experience. Manbij, it's in the news right now. Beautiful area. I think the city sits on top of a hill. It's a mountainous region as well. Beautiful trees. It's like pine trees. It's a very strange area. Just west of the Euphrates River, and it was taken by the SNA. I hate those dudes. And then we have Gerespi, which back in 2019 was taken by the Turkish government and the SNA forces. And yeah, they surrounded the city. It was about a month or two long. They took Gerespi as well as Sarakania just east of that, which we'll talk about. But yeah, Gerespi was super cool. Large Arab community, but they all support us. They're all like, yeah, it's peaceful here. Thank you. But the Turkish government, even back before they invaded, I was there sleeping on a rooftop at nighttime, and I was hearing some explosions. I was like, what is that? I was looking out in the distance, and the Arab fighter, I was speaking to him, and he said, yeah, the Turks, every night, they like to bomb the farm fields, start a fire, try and destroy our economy. And they did. You know, here's some of the videos of what Turkey was doing. They would burn up all the farm fields, make it so our economy was terrible there, and poverty, and the currency, everything it just went so bad, especially after 2019. They're trying to destroy the morale of the people, trying to create democracy here. They're trying to say, hey, why don't you just come underneath our umbrella, be our subjects? And they don't want that. And then there's Sarakania, beautiful city, huge. But it was also taken. Netchir, who was killed in Ukraine about 2 years ago, he fought there. He was hit by a tank, and he was surrounded, got evacuated. Free Burma Rangers, yeah, they had a group out there doing medical evacs and all that. One of their medical personnel was killed by a Turkish mortar, or SNA mortar, we don't know, but they're all terrorists nonetheless. And yeah, he was killed by that near Sarakania. And also one of the fighters in YBS who went from Iraq, smuggled into Syria when the invasion happened in Sarakania. He was killed there in a medical facility. So yeah, lots of stuff with Sarakania. It's a beautiful city. They had a beautiful cemetery for all the fighters of YPG and SDF, and it's definitely ransacked now, but it was beautiful. And then we have Derek. Derek is where I spent the majority of my time. It's like the safest part of Syria. It's way out in the east, in this corner pocket. And I experienced everything that I had mentioned to you guys, how we live in peace. Derek is kind of split between the Muslims and the Christians. It's a city, and it's split. They intermingle. They go to each other's shops and everything. There's no suicide bombers. There's nothing dangerous there. It's super peaceful. You can go anywhere you want in the city. I actually preferred the Muslim part of it because they had the best shawarma. Sunni, Shiite, Christian, Jews, it doesn't matter. And that's what I experienced for the 7 months I was in Syria. ISIS tried to burn down our base a couple times, you know, these sleeper cells, but other than that, it was pretty safe. You know, like the academy there was bombed by the Turks. We had a lot of close calls with that, a lot of jets and a lot of drones, and it was all because of the Turkish military. We were living in peace, in democracy, doing our own thing. The only people giving us problems was Turkey and ISIS. It's like, okay, who's the good guys in this? Turkey or ISIS? Or the SDF? Living in peace, living in Derek, living among each other. And then I think about Shengal. You know, Shengal, it's in Iraq, but it's a similar thing. Democratic and federalism. You should be able to notice on the patch wall, YBS patch right here, YPG patch. It looks the same. It's because it's pretty much the same organization, just a different militia in a different area. Every community has their own militia. It was beautiful. I lived among them. I lived in the tunnels. I was in a Kurdish tabor. I learned Kurdish fluently. I loved every single little bit of it. And we lived among Arabs. We lived among Muslims and people, Yazidis, who are Christians or Abrahamic. And the whole reason YBS was created, you think about the militias, why don't they just depend on a big military? Why is it just militias? Well, the YBS had a military that was in Shengal. It was called the Iraqi Army. But you know what happened? They didn't secure the area. Thousands of people died from suicide bombers in the 80s and 90s in Shengal until YBS became a thing, a local security militia. And then when ISIS came, took thousands of Yazidi people, and they're still being found today. Thousands of slaves and everything. Really, really brutal stuff. These are the only ones defending the land. The Iraqi army fled. Peshmerga fled. The people of the community have the right mindset. They will be the ones to stand and fight. The other armies, the regime, the mercenaries backed by Turkey, they're not gonna do that job. They're not gonna work for that. It's the communities. They really care about their families and the people around them and their identity. And that's why it's so powerful. Eastern Syria is controlled by these communities under democratic confederalism, under the SDF. Does it make sense? Hopefully. So, anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, it's a sad situation, but we're gonna get through it. Syrian people, all my friends in Aleppo, all my friends in Manbij, in Syria in general. I pray for you guys. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.